Well, I've finally gotten my hands on another high-end 4K HDR mini LED gaming monitor, and this time it's actually very affordable as well. So there's a lot of people asking about it, and the monitor in question is the KTC M27P20P, which was sent to me for review by KTC, so thank you guys for that. But of course, that's not going to change my opinions. You know I'm going to absolutely attack any issues with this display. Okay, maybe that's a strong word to be using, but you get the idea. I'm not letting up. Now, the question is, sure, it's very affordable, but is it good? Well, let's go ahead and take a look. So, the M27P20P is a 3840 by 2160, 160 Hz, 27-inch, 16:9 fast IPS monitor with 576 local dimming zones, a contrast ratio allegedly of 1,000,000:1, a response time allegedly of 1 millisecond MPRT. It is G-Sync and FreeSync compatible and has an HDR rating of HDR 1000, so that's actually very good. Now, it does come with a stand. It's very good, does everything you want it to do, and in terms of ports, it's got a power in, which unfortunately is not a regular power cable, so that's a bit of a shame, as I do prefer those. It has two USB 3.0s, one USB 3.0 upstream, a Type-C with, I believe, 90-watt charging, DisplayPort 1.4, which can do 3840 by 2160 at 144 Hz, and then an HDMI 2.1, which can do 4K 160 Hz at 8-bit or 4K at 120 Hz 10-bit, according to their materials. And then it also has a 3.5mm jack. But what about VESA mounting? Yes, you can do that as well. But in terms of a price, this thing is actually very affordable, guys, at least compared to some other alternatives. I mean, when these things were first coming out, some people were charging for similar technology around $3,000. You can get this one on Amazon right now. I just checked for around $750, and I can get it delivered in just 3 days. So the availability is good, the price is good, everything's looking good. But what about the actual performance? First, starting off with the color, and I will say the color is pretty decent, although I will say in HDR, it seems like it's missing a little bit of digital vibrancy, so it could use probably a firmware update to slightly improve that, but it's not off by a lot, just maybe a little bit. And in terms of the actual calibration, out of the box, it's a mess in sRGB. It's nowhere near close to where it needs to be. However, with some tuning, guys, I was able to get it to be very good, tracking that EOTF curve where it should be and getting a good RGB balance. So if you want all of these settings and ICC profiles that I create not only for this monitor, but all my monitors, I will have a link to my Patreon in the description below, which also gets you access to the Discord and all that other good stuff. So I do highly suggest taking a look at that if you're going to be using this for any amount of professional work or honestly even gaming. But in HDR, things are a little different. It's not good out of the box, and there just isn't a whole lot I can do to make it any better. So yeah, HDR is just going to be a little inaccurate, and there's just not much you can do about that. But what about color volume? Well, in sRGB, it's very good, giving you around 172% BT709, around 116% DCI-P3, and around 78% BT2020, which is pretty dang good. And in HDR, it's just a little bit better. So very good to see there. But what about brightness? That's very important for these HDR displays, and thankfully 100% window brightness, this thing is really good. It gets 1071 nits, making it one of the brightest mini LED displays I have tested thus far. And in a 10% window, it's also very good, coming in again one of the brightest that I've tested, and is just behind stuff like the S95C, which, while that does have higher peak brightness, it is definitely dimmer overall usually than something like one of these mini LED displays. But what about in a game? And here, once again, it does very well. It's around the upper middle of the pack, giving you 810 nits, which is a pretty decent highlight considering the rest of the scene was also pretty bright as well. Much brighter than, say, OLEDs that I've tested, even if they do give very good peak brightness. So what about the minimum brightness though? Because this is a problem with LCD-based technology, and here you can see, yes, it is still a problem. The KTC M27P20P gave me a minimum reading of 0.06 nits, which does mean you're not going to be getting infinite contrast ratios like you'd see on an OLED. The contrast still can be very good depending on what's on your screen, but not quite as good as what you see again on OLED. But what is the contrast ratio? Well, it depends on how generous you're going to be. If you take the brightest bright versus the darkest dark, it's 17,850 to 1. But the way you're technically supposed to do it in a checkerboard pattern, I only got 2,856 to 1. So I have no idea where they're getting 1 million to 1, as I could not make that happen. So maybe they can tell me how they were able to do that. I couldn't. So there you go. It does have pretty decent contrast ratios, but I have seen better. And in terms of overclocking, if you're doing 160 Hertz, no, you're not gonna be able to do that. And in terms of latency, here it's actually a little bit underwhelming. And this is, I believe, due to the mini LED backlight adding a little bit of latency. 37 milliseconds isn't terrible, but it's certainly quite a bit worse than other non-mini LED options that come in closer to like that 30 milliseconds with a similar type of refresh rate. But what about the motion performance? And at 160 Hertz, as you can see, it's actually pretty dang good. At 120 Hertz, there does start to become a little bit more noticeable blurring. And then at 60 Hertz, it actually has quite a bit of a trail behind the object. So this is also another issue with LCD-based technologies. A lot of them, unless they're very, very carefully tuned, will start to show much, much worse motion performance at those lower refresh rates, where OLED has nowhere near as many problems with that. So if you can't run at least 100 frames per second on this panel, it might not be the optimal experience. So you are going to need a very, very powerful graphics card. This is not like OLED. You cannot get away with the really low refresh rates and still have a good looking image. But what about text clarity? And here it's actually excellent, thankfully, because it's not using some sort of weird sub-pixel layout, meaning that, yeah, text is going to look exactly how it should, and it looks great. But the only downside is it's using a matte finish. I don't know why companies continue to use matte finishes on their display. It harms the contrast ratios, it harms the clarity, it harms the vibrancy, it harms so many aspects of the display. And honestly, even text clarity, it would be a little bit more clear if it was using a glossy finish. So if there's one major thing I'd like to see them improve, it would be the finish. I really, really think that all manufacturers on 4K or mini LED or OLED displays, anything that's a very premium display should be using a premium glossy finish. It's not even really up for debate. We can measure that it is significantly better than a matte finish, and it's just not worth the diffusion of light to be giving up so many advantages that glossy can give you. So that's the only thing I think I would really like to see improved upon this. In terms of the viewing angles, unfortunately, this is another issue with mini LED. It doesn't have the greatest viewing angles. If you go too far to the left or right or up or down, you will see a washing out of color. So this is why I say mini LED is good for desktop use, but I don't like mini LEDs in TVs, because if there's people in different spots of the room not looking at it straight on, it can be a problem. But it really shouldn't be a problem, considering you should have it right in front of you. So there you have it. Just don't be leaning way back or something like that. But overall, yeah, I didn't really have any other issues. So as a conclusion, is this worth it? It's not perfect, it has its faults, but overall it is fairly good compared to other 4K mini LED monitors. And because it's available and it's good, I'm going to say yes, this actually is a good purchase. It is going to have some downsides that come with mini LED, but that's just the nature of the game. And at such a good price, I'm going to give it a thumbs up, and I will have an Amazon affiliate link in the description below if you want to go ahead and purchase this monitor. Whether you're looking to connect a new console, gaming PC, or just need a fast and reliable HDMI cable to connect over long distances, Rupro has you covered with their certified 8K HDMI 2.1 fiber optic cable, available in sizes of up to 50 feet and can deliver a perfect full 48 gigabits per second connection over distances other cables could only dream of reaching. And with 48 gigabits per second of bandwidth, it can easily drive 8K 60 FPS or 4K 144 FPS 10-bit HDR video through its ultra-thin, flexible, and durable housing, and it even supports ER. So if you're in the market for a cable that can drive a beautiful new TV or monitor, be sure to check out Rupro on Amazon today.